Hello, students. Welcome back to your channel. Yes, today I'm back once again for my class 11 students, and today we shall be doing the second poem for your syllabus, that is Tony Hoagland's Why I Like the Hospital. This is again from your Rhapsody, a collection of ISC poems published by Evergreen Publications. All right, so we are on page 9, and as I always say, that before starting any piece of art, be it a short story, be it, a poem, be it any novel, it is very important to read a bit about the author. All right, so on page 9, we are going to read about the poet. Of course, not the entire this thing, but a part of it. All right. So, Anthony de Hoagland was a renowned modern American poet. Okay, so he's an American, and we come down. He has authored several poetry collections, starting from Sweet Ruins to Donkey Gospel, What Narcissism Means to Me, Therapist Treats Fear of God, Priest Turned Therapist Treats Fear of God, so on and so forth. All right, and his final book has been Turn Up the Ocean. Hoagland's poetry is known for its acerbic, witty take on contemporary life and straight talk. Now, what is this acerbic? Acerbic means satirical, okay, where the author is pointing out the flaws of the society, not directly, but he's making you realize through laughter that these are the areas of problem. These are the problematic areas, rather. And he's doing that through laughter. But that laughter is not pleasurable. The laughter is going to leave a bad taste in the mouth. All right, so a curvic, witty take on contemporary life and straight talk. So, this is very important. The style of writing of Tony Hoagland, that they are extremely satirical and witty. But then this wit is always intermingled with a sense of pathos, with a sense of pain in it. In almost all his works, we'll get that. All right, now coming to the poem Why I Like the Hospital by Tony Hoagland. You see, right at the beginning, why I like the hospital. Who likes a hospital, man, anyway? But let's see what the poet is trying to say here, especially when we know that he is known for its acerbic, witty take on contemporary life. Now, why I like the hospital. The title, right at the opening, is very, very gripping, suggestive, striking, and appealing. Why? Because it is not a very common practice or not very regular common thing among people to like the hospital. But here our poet says that he likes the hospital. But why? Let us find out. Because it is all right to be in a bad mood there, slouching along through the underground garage, riding wordlessly on the elevator with the other customers, staring at the closed beach doors like a prison wall. So you see, the poet begins the poem in a very unusual manner. The poem opens extremely abruptly. It starts with a because. All right. The poem opens abruptly. It starts with a because, and he says it is all right to be in a bad mood. So he starts off by justifying it is absolutely fine to not in the best of your moods. Okay, in the hospital. So this is a very wry, humorous comment. Wry here means W-R-Y, wry means it is extremely satirical. Okay, it is a dry, humorous, satirical comment on that it is extremely all right that if you're not in the best of your moods in the hospital, slouching along through the underground garage, and then you slouch with, with your shoulders drooped, and you're not in the best of your this appearance. So you move through the underground garage riding wordlessly on the elevator. So you're, suppose you're someone from your family or friend or someone whom you know is admitted to the hospital, and you're entering the hospital, the image, understand this image. So you're entering the hospital, and you have crossed the garage, and then you step into the elevator. What is an elevator? It's a lift. Okay. So you're entering the elevator to go upstairs, and there you're absolutely shut, wordlessly on the elevator. So you're absolutely quiet inside with the other customers. Very important thing to note. The poet chooses to write customers. This is a dig, at the present day medical system, where, the family and acquaintances of patients are looked up as customers, prospective customers who would bring in a lot of money, lot of business for the hospitals. Okay, such is the custom in today's society, such is the practice in today's society. It feels very strange that a society has become so hollow that we try to mint money of anything and everything. It was just 2 to 3 years back when COVID struck, right? And if you have not forgotten, children, medicine and oxygen supplies were scarce in society. And all over Facebook, WhatsApp, there were posts being put up that oxygen is needed there, this medicine is needed here. And my God, such skyrocketing prices at that crisis of human civilization, probably the greatest crisis human civilization has faced till date in present times, at least in the present times. Okay, so it is said that when the this thing, other customers, okay, so other patient parties are looked up as the customers, and all of them are strangely wordless. That is, they're extremely silent. They choose not to speak, staring at the closed beach doors like a prison wall. And what does the elevator seems like? The elevator seems like a prison wall. Why? Because, you see, prison is a place of confinement. It is what happens when you're stuck in a prison. It is, you're being stuck in an unhappy situation. So is the hospital. Nobody is really happy in a hospital to get admitted to the hospital. All they would want is to get back to their homes at the earliest, right? So the prison wall, or rather the hospital, is considered or compared to a prison wall. And the figure of speech here used is a simile because it is like a prison wall. Another thing I wish to draw your attention to is that riding wordlessly on the elevator. An elevator is an enclosed space, it's a very small space. Yet, there are so many people inside it, but nobody talks. So, this is a hint at the alienation which is rampant in the present day society. Alienation in a crowd, loneliness in a crowd. We are all together, but we are all separated. All right. That is something to be very uh, important to notice. I like the hospital for the way it grants permission for pathos. He says he's clarifying here. He likes the hospital. Why? Because it grants the permission for pathos. Pathos is expression of your passion, whether you're extremely sad, broken down, you know, devastated. that you could, let out, vent out. So he says he likes the hospital bit because it allows you to break down, it allows you to vent your feelings out. In other words, in society, outside the hospital, nowhere else are we allowed to break down children. That you have to remember. We face so many disheartening situations in life, but yet we have to put up our broadest smile possible and continue to walk. We have to put the best show of ourselves so as to not let the person sitting right across understand what's going on in our mind. But that is not the case in a hospital. In a hospital, we are granted the permission for pathos. This is to noticed that it hospital grants you the permission for pathos. Such a wry comment again from the poet's part. The mother with cancer deciding how to tell her kids. The bald girl gazing downward at the shunt installed above her missing breast. The croon in her pajamas walking with an ivy pole. So, whom does the poet meet? The poet meets firstly a mother with the cancer. The mother has been diagnosed with cancer and she's unable to decide how to let her children know that she's been diagnosed with such a terminally ill disease. Then then the poet meets a bald girl, okay, gazing downward at the shunt. What is a shunt? Shunt is a small tube through which blood is being carried. Okay. So there is this bald girl which is looking at the shunt installed above her missing breast. So one of her breast has been removed because of some sort of a disease. It could be cancer also, very common. It could be, but we are not sure since the poet does not specify. And then, thirdly, the poet meets the croon. Croon is an ugly old woman who is in her pajamas walking with an IV pole. IV pole is an intravenous pole, the syringe which is put, through your nerves to inject you with food and medicine and so on and so forth. So, these are the patients which the poet meets in the hospital, and all of them have been granted permission of what? Granted permission of expressing their pathos, which they won't be able to just outside the hospital, because society expects them to be strong, to fight. But at the end of the day, that they are human beings made of flesh and blood is not understood by society. It is all right to break down. It is all right to vent your feelings. That is what the society never understands. It always expects you to, put up the bravest show possible and make the show go on. All right. Then he goes on to say, I don't like the smell of antiseptic, or the air conditioning set on high all night, or the fresh flowers tossed in the water basket. So, these are the things the poet does not like in a hospital. He does not firstly like the smell of antiseptic, because antiseptic is, applied when you get some sort of a wound or some sort of an injury to, you know prevent it from becoming gangrenous. Antiseptic is applied, but he does not like the smell of the antiseptic. Why? Because antiseptic is associated again with sickness and death. So the poet does not approve of it. Or the air conditioning set on high all night. What happens when the air conditioning is set too high? It becomes extremely chilly, and this chilly atmosphere, you know is symbolic of lack of warmth, lack of passion, lack of compassion. That is why the poet does not like it. Thirdly, the poet does not like the fresh flowers. Why? Because the fresh flowers tossed into the waste basket. Whenever people visit their relatives or friends in the hospital, what do they carry? They usually carry a bouquet of flowers, and the next day the bouquet is thrown out into the waste bin, right? So this very image of fresh flowers being thrown out and thrown tossed in the waste bin is an image which shows out which brings out the human callousness. So the speaker does not approve of it really. But I like the way some people on their plastic chairs break out a notebook and invent a complex scoring system. By the way, if you notice here, fresh flowers is an instance of alliteration. All right. So we've come across the beige doors like a prison wall, which is your simile. Permission for pathos is an alliteration again. And now here fresh flowers, which is again an alliteration. So we see multiple rhetorical devices are being employed at multiple juncture in the poem to bring out the view of why the poet likes the hospital. But I like the way some people on their plastic chairs break out a notebook and invent a complex scoring system. Complex scoring system again is an alteration. To tally up their days on earth, the column on the left that says, Times I acted like a fool, facing the column on the right that says, Times I acted like a saint. So, what does the poet like? This is very interesting. This image is extremely interesting. This is a very thought provoking image as well as it is extremely amusing, for me at least. He says he likes this idea that people who are quite aged in the hospital, they sit on plastic chairs. And what do? They take out a notebook and invent a complex scoring system. They devise some sort of, uh, calculation system. What do they calculate? They calculate the number of days that are left for them on this earth. In other words, how many days they are going to live on the earth. That is what they do. And what else do they do in the notebook? They bring out the notebook and divides it into two columns. Okay. Two columns. In one columns, they write times I acted like a fool. That is times when I've been extremely foolish. And times I acted like a saint when I've been extremely wise. And they keep tabulating the details. So hospitals kind of provide them a place for introspection where they could, reflect back on their doings in life. Okay, they could think about the things that they have done all their life and they keep jotting it down. So, this is a moment of extreme introspection for these people. So, that is why I find this image extremely thought provoking because not every day do we get to, introspect on our life. At least we are so busy with our day-to-day schedule, with our day-to-day the activities that we hardly get to think about what we did the day before yesterday, let alone the entire life. But the irony is the hospital provides us with that opportunity. So that is why the poet or the speaker feels that he likes the hospital because it provides an arena where we could sit and introspect. That is the irony. I like the long prairie of the waiting, the forced intimacy of the self with the self, each sick person standing in the middle of a field like a tree wondering what happened to the forest. I like the long prairie of the waiting. Prairie is actually a grassland of North America. Okay. What the poet is saying is he likes the long period of waiting in the hospital. Your patient goes in and you do not know what is going to be the outcome. You have to keep waiting. You have to keep waiting when the doctor would come on visit, whatever updates he would give. So it's a prolonged period of waiting. He says he likes that. Why? Because in that long period of waiting, there is the forced intimacy of the self with the self. It is not every day that we get to talk to ourselves, right? I am talking to myself. I am confronting myself for whatever work that I have done throughout my life and throughout my career, whether they are correct, whether I could have done things better, whether they were wrong, the wrongs that I have committed, and the people who have done wrong to me. All these dialogues, these debates, this discussions, all right, not every day do we get to do, right? So, this hospital provides an opportunity where we could meet the self with the self, and it is a moment of self revelation, that is well. But mind you, this is a moment of forced intimacy because none of us are willing to go and get ourselves admitted in the hospital, right? It is only when we fall sick that we go and get admitted. So this is thus a forced intimacy of the self with the self, and each sick person standing in the middle of a field like a tree wondering what happened to the forest. This is a very, very poignant and important image of modern 21st century children. See, previously also we have seen this image where the hospitals resemble that of the prison walls because they were the hospital is a place of restricted mobility. It makes you socially isolated, it makes you dependent on the others, like what is usually done in a prison. In prison you cannot move around freely, it is also a place of restricted mobility. Here again, so the idea of loneliness was brought out, alienation was brought out, most importantly here also, when the poet says each sick person standing in the middle of a field. This is not just any field, not the ground or the playground. This is the field of human society. The reference here is made to the human society. And each sick person standing in the middle of a field like a tree wondering what happened to the forest. The tree here is symbolic of the single individual who's been cut off from the forest. What is the forest? This human society. Because the moment that person is sick, he is separated and put in the hospital. So he's cut off from the society. So again, loneliness, alienation, loneliness in a crowd. Loneliness in a crowd is actually a concept propagated by T.S. Eliot, the greatest poets modern world has ever produced. So, like a tree wandering, what happened to the forest? So, talking of the modern Westland, where society is constantly making you separated, alien, and lonely. And once I saw a man in a lime green dressing gown, hunched over in a chair, a man who was not yelling at the doctor or pretending to be strong or making a murmured phone call to his wife, but one sobbing without shame, pumping it all out from the bottom of the self, the overflowing bilge of helplessness and rage, a man no longer expecting to be saved. So, who else did the poet meet? The poet also met a man who was dressed how? In a lime green dress. Where did he meet? Of course, in the hospital. And how was he sitting? He was sitting hunched in a chair, or with the face put inside the this thing, the knees. A man who was not yelling at the doctor or pretending to be strong. So he's given up on his life. He has accepted the resignation. He's not shouting at the doctors anymore that why am I not getting better? He's neither pretending to be strong or making a murmured phone call to his wife. He's neither talking over the phone to his wife. So he have become extremely reclusive. He's become extremely stoic. He's so done with life. But one sobbing without shame. and crying, crying profusely, crying without shame. Alliteration again, sobbing without shame. Why is the question of shame? Because it is not society approved thing that a man should be crying. If you're crying as a man, then you would not be considered manly. If you do not have your muscles and six packs, you would not be considered the hunk in society. Society has multiple check boxes to tick to make you a female, a male, a hunk, an alpha male. Lot of tags would be put on you if you do not conform to society's standard. And that is why the poet likes the hospital, because even though the hospital is a part of the society, it is a society in its own right, in its own way, where, unlike the society, it grants permission for pathos. Okay, and here this man has been sobbing without shame. He's not at all ashamed to not be a man enough by society's standard. He's profusely crying. He's letting his emotions out, the overflowing bilge of happiness and rage is of course anger, and bilge is nonsense. A man no longer expecting to be saved. He is hopeless. He has resigned. He has become reclusive. He's become stoic in nature. He's so done with his life. But if you looked, you could see that he was holding his own hand in sympathy, listening to every single word, and he was telling himself everything. This is the stark reality of our modern times. In the last league of life, when we become too detached from these worldly pleasures, we feel alienated from all the worldly ties and societal ties. There we start communicating our own selves, we start introspecting, and then there is the struggle for existence, that if I have lived my life, did I live correctly, did I live honorably enough, did I not do wrong to anybody, if I have done what in what way can I reprimand or correct my errors. So these are all these little talks that we have with our own self, and it is when then only that we hold our own hands in sympathy, because otherwise the society lacks apathy. The society does not care for your hood also. It is only we ourselves who, are our best friends. And it is thus very important for us to talk to ourselves, to have a clarity of things, to have a clear vision of things. And this is only possible in the last league of our life, when we are, have matured to a certain extent, to a certain this thing. So that is when we get the moments of epiphany, the moments of realization. And it is from this perspective the poet says that he likes the hospital. Okay, so because the society does not allow you to be yourself, to express yourself, and you could do only these things in a hospital, that is why the poet says he likes the hospital. So, the major themes that you would find in this poem is that of expression of emotions and sentiments in a society that is devoid of apathy and compassion, and also putting on the facade of being okay always, so that the show must go on. All of us are not okay. Deep inside, we are all broken. We are trying our best to survive. But that we are putting on this facade that we are all okay is very difficult. So the poet wishes to highlight this particular issue in this poem. And as I said right at the beginning, the hospital is a place where there is a lot of hopelessness, fear, anxiety, sadness, depression, anger, hopelessness, helplessness. Yet the poet says he likes the hospital. Why? And he categorically gives out the reasons that hospital is the only place which allows you to be your own self, which allows you to be your own self without thinking about the society's approved tick boxes. That is why he likes the hospital. Therefore, the title of the poem is extremely appropriate, is absolutely appropriate, and it is at the same time striking, relevant, and appealing, as well as suggestive. All right, I hope I could provide you the explanation of the poem why I like the hospital in a very lucid manner. If you like this video, please give me a like, and most importantly, do not forget to subscribe. Okay, see you in the next video. Till then, goodbye, have fun, and enjoy to the fullest.